We are a little short today. We do have quorum, so I would imagine that there will be a lot more time for your point of view, everybody. So, okay, so let's start. I need a motion for the agenda. Councillor Barry, thank you. Is there any additions or deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next up is a motion to accept the minutes of our last regular legislative meeting. Councillor Curtis makes the motion. Is there any errors or omissions within those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next up is delegations. And we have Mrs. Laura Lilies from the Windy Brook Festival here today to make a presentation. Laura, you have a guest with you?
Yes, I do.
Hit it one more time. There you go. And who's your guest today?
Norma McCowan from the Windy Brook Festival.
Hello, Norma.
All right. Well, my name is Laura Lilies. Thank you so much for having me today. And before I get started, I normally am not super nervous public speaking. A little bit intimidated today, not gonna lie. But actually, I found it very impressive, and Tanine, when you spoke at the forum, I was just super impressed with how well you did everything off the cuff. That's my endeavor today. But I'm here on behalf of the Windy Brook Music Festival Association, and the reason I'm here is I think that this has been proposed maybe in previous years, but I feel like it's a good time to bring it again. So as I said, my name is Laura Lilies, and I did not grow up in Vegreville. I actually was born and raised in a little town called Smithers, BC, and it's about the same size as Vegreville, so about 6,500 people. And like Vegreville, it's kind of a hub for the surrounding area, so there's about probably 15 to 20,000 more people that it affects just with its growth and progress. And I feel like Vegreville is very much that type of town for this area. So I grew up, Smithers is a very musical, very arts kind of community. And so I grew up doing band and choir and was part of my church choirs, and all growing up, it was a huge part of my life. And just before I moved here in 2011, I think in 2009, I had the privilege of conducting our local community choir. It was 50 people, a live band, and it was a Christmas cantata. It was just amazing, probably my highlight for my life that I lived there. And so music is really important to me. We moved here in 2011, and my daughter was just starting at the high school, and I was kind of disappointed that there was no music programs. Now, they did start up the band program, so that was awesome, but I believe that was the first year they had it. But it really, I had anticipated that my kids would grow up in a community that had so much to offer. So I was a little disappointed, but it was short-lived because I think 2012, when I started teaching piano here, I was kind of introduced into the Windy Brook Music Festival, and such a fantastic festival. When I was growing up, all my experiences, we had two festivals. One was an hour and a half away, one was 2 hours away, and then the bigger center, Prince George, which was almost 4 hours away. So we are absolutely privileged to have the Windy Brook Music Festival in town. So the Windy Brook Music Festival, if you don't know, was established in 1979 by a lady, a visionary by the name of Lee Gablehouse. And this year, she passed away. And I think that it's so good for us to honor her. Since 1979, I guess it's been 44, almost 45 years of pretty much consecutive music festivals. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 years there that we missed. But what a legacy, what an accomplishment, especially for a community of our size. So because of this legacy and because of the lady that she had this vision, she had this dream, she wanted to run with it. I would love to just honor that as a community and show our support by perhaps looking into and providing a permanent music hall. I was actually frankly dismayed at how we have so much going on in this community and we don't have a venue for like guest performers or anything like that. I grew up listening to concert pianists when they would come in and they would share their gift. And so if there's a hole, I feel like that's a hole, but I feel that we can fill it. Since 1979, if we've had even 100 families participate in the Wendy Brook Festival, that means over 4,400 families have been blessed. And that's really low numbers, because I know at the kind of height of our attendance, we've had over 300 entrants in our festival every year. Like, I think that went down a little bit during COVID, but I think we're on the rise again. So very exciting. This festival brings a lot of life to our community. A permanent venue specifically for Wendy Brook Music Festival would allow a couple things. First of all, music is obviously oral. It's important for musical performances to have a venue that has good acoustics, good lighting, and we have used lots of different places that we've been privileged to either have been donated to us or we rent for a very, very small fee. But honestly, for a performer myself, it's so important to have a good acoustical space. Just as proper flooring is necessary for dance, so acoustics are important for performances. And that's not just for anyone, that's from the top performer all the way to the student that is learning. A permanent venue would also allow for the potential to have many, many different fundraisers or community events to build kind of our community progress. Off the top of my head, dinner theaters, musical theaters. We could have an acting guild for local piano teachers, a place for recitals, coffee houses, lots of fundraisers that include music as a side, but not necessarily as the focus. In Smithers, what happened is we had two newish venues. One in my lifetime was called the Della Herman Theater, again, named for a teacher that was instrumental in our music program. And they built this Della Herman Theater on the existing public high school. And how they did that, and I'm sure they had grants and all that, but they built the auditorium and they built the stage. The stage was where they hosted drama options. And then during the daytime, they were able to use the auditorium as 4 different classrooms, which I remember doing English and socials in. So very, very useful, and I mean, I liked it, so it must be a good idea if I liked it. The other thing that they did is we had a local church that had kind of fallen in disrepair. It was a heritage church. So the town, I believe, just adopted it, and we refurbished it and made it into a smaller venue. I think it sat maybe 100 people, but it was lovely for intimate gatherings, and I know they use it almost every week. It's my hope that we can begin exploring options to make this dream a reality. The Wendy Brook Music Festival has proved its staying power and has proved its cultural enhancement for our community. I think we should respond in kind. I should mention that I've also had brief discussions with the Vegreville visual artists members, and they would love to collaborate if possible, to have a space of their own as well. And I can totally imagine things like the visual arts, the performing arts, excluding dance. Usually they need bigger venues. But even like Vegreville Garden Club, all of these places could benefit from having a local spot that we can highlight music, we can display artwork, we could have them beautify the grounds if I'm just throwing my dreams way out there. I feel like this would be a great collaboration. I have a few venue possibilities that I've been kind of thinking about in my head. I have no idea, as you can probably tell, I'm brand new at proposing this type of an idea, and so I really have no idea what I'm asking. But I know that there's probably buildings in town that are in disrepair or not being used or that could be renovated. Off the top of my head, I'd love to explore ideas for the library gym or the old schoolhouse outside of Vegreville. Are there various empty buildings owned by the town that we could build? Perhaps we could build something new onto one of the schools. I'm open for options, and for sure I'm open to any direction or leading that you as a council could give me, or direct me to somebody who is very good at this sort of thing. In conclusion, on behalf of the Wendy Brook Festival and the community of Vegreville at large, please accept my proposal for a permanent music venue, namely the Lee Gable House Memorial Hall. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Laura? Sure. Councillor Rudick is an alumni of the Wendy Brook Festival.
Yes.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Laura, for presenting today. You wouldn't have lived here when I first came on council, but since I was elected in 2010, it has been incredibly important to me that we recognize the number of people that are involved in arts and culture, and one of those things took many years to change the curtains at the social center to be able to be theater appropriate, because we had decorative curtains that could never showcase performers, and in that instance it would be the hundreds of children and adults in the area that are dancers, various forms. And I know from my own personal experience with Wendy Brook how important it is to hundreds of families in the area. And although we often spend a lot of time as council talking about recreation opportunities for our different folks in the area of various kinds, arts and culture are incredibly important for bringing people to the community and keeping them here. So I appreciate the work that the Wendy Brook Festival does and look forward to seeing how we can connect resources and people to be able to see what this might look like in the future, knowing that, of course, council has a limited role to play in that. During my lifetime, there have been 2 different times that arts committees have been struck to build concert halls, and one of those iterations resulted in the pool and the aquatic center that is currently in existence. So that is the one element of that building is the ballet studio, which did not result in being a concert center, but there have been 2 different times in my lifetime that I know that there have been community efforts to talk about how to showcase the arts. So thank you for presenting, and thanks for being here to be able to enlighten all of us and make sure that we consider a lot of families that maybe don't come front and center and ask for things like some other groups do. So thank you.
Do you have something?
Yeah. Sure, I appreciate you coming, and very good proposal. I just think for you too, keep searching and reaching out to those other groups. I think the more you have together is a better opportunity to, like Councillor Rudick said, strike up a group or to get some funds together in that, and then think of things that you want to do that can benefit them all. So I think the more input from all those different groups as well will definitely help.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, thank you as well. And I've spent time in Smithers, so yes, I like it setting at the foot of the mountain and the glacier. Yeah. It's not the first time that I've heard a similar proposal to this, in a sense. In fact, I was involved in one where we tried to get funding, a grant and et cetera. Struggling right now, I believe it is actually a type of radio contest or a program where you got the whole community to try and keep voting until the last community standing would get the grant. We didn't come in for it, but our proposal at that time, and Laurie Evans was actually involved at that time as well, we were looking at trying to renovate the library gym to a performing arts by extending somewhat to the north to improve the stage area and make it acoustically viable as well. It's difficult to really come up with funding, and it's not something that I would expect our town administration to be looking for. Mm-hmm. So if there's any way that you can form a bit more of a committee group together to start attacking it from different angles to see what can be raised in terms of grants, donations, personal businesses, I think the community can get behind this. but it has to have somebody that is driving it and bringing them together to some extent, not unlike the Rotary pulling off building a beautiful skate park out there. So I can give support, moral support, but I'm not certain how council itself can achieve it for you.
So am I right in understanding that the next logical step would be actually getting funds? Who takes care, like, I feel like that would have been something that comes after because people just don't give, money to, if I ask, will you give me money? So what would be the first step? Because I have talked with community members and other organizations, but I'm not sure what the
It's
next.
a wild guess. I would have to think that you'd have to be able to try and get some sort of a performing arts group together consisting of a number of the different groups so that you actually could set out what your objectives were.
Okay.
And, in order to try and, each group working in a silo is not going to probably accomplish anything. So you'd probably actually have a focus group that was actually looking at how can we pull this all together
Right.
and start fleshing out ideas a little bit broader.
Right. Okay.
Some of the facilities here, I don't know.
Okay.
That's something that would have to be worked on a little closer. But that's probably about the closest I could see. As an individual,
Okay.
no, it's going to be tough. You'd have to get the groups you're already talking to somehow come together so that you're unified in trying to go after performing arts.
Right. Okay.
Well, Laura, again, thank you for your presentation. The legacy name is amazing, the Honor Lee. I feel that moving forward, like Councillor Berry said, you would like to get as many stakeholders involved in this as you possibly can. And I do believe that there's a role that the municipality will have. I mean, we're in negotiating right now with Elk Island Public School Board about what their facilities are going to look like down the next 3 or 4 years. And we have a vested interest in hopefully maybe building something new, and there's always the chance that there may be another piece of a facility that we're in now that we might not be using later. But we will keep it front of mind.
Thank you.
And if you can get some more community support for this, I know that the federal government, the provincial government fund the arts, and we would have a role to play, maybe not a monetary role, but providing a facility or helping in some way. I like your vision for sure. And we all know, I know since I've been in town, I've sponsored through my business for many, many years, the Wendy Brook Festival. And it's brought a lot of joy to a lot of people in this whole area. So don't give up on where you're going. I think it's time to get the community involved. And as we move forward, anything that we can bring or we can offer, we'll support it. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
okay, thank you. Thanks for coming, Norma.
Oh, it was wonderful. I quite enjoyed it. Very proud of our secretary here.
Well, she spoke very well.
Well, Norma critiqued all my grammar and made sure it was.
Councillor Rudick does the same to mine. See you later. Okay, up next, Community Engagement Coordinator, Lane Flickstead. Hello, Lane. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so since 2019, the town of Vegreville has released an annual report in the hopes of capturing department highlights, functions, and accomplishments of the preceding calendar year in an engaging manner. The annual report also includes an in-depth financial analysis that demonstrates the town's financial position and commitment to ongoing fiscal responsibility and transparency. To minimize printing costs, the 2022 annual report will be published online at vegreville.com with the option for residents to request a printed copy by visiting the Town of Vegreville Administration Office. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm here.
Okay, well, we all took a look at it. Looks good to me. There's a lot of information in there, that's for sure. Anybody that would like to know anything more about our town this would be a great piece for them to see, so. Any other comments of anybody else regarding?
I can just second that. I did go through, there's a lot of good information in there. It shows a lot of what we've done, right? And I think it's really good. I read through the whole thing. I didn't find anything out of place. It all looked really good, so good work.
Thank you.
Okay. So. So the annual report will have to be, there'll be a recommendation to council at the next meeting, and we'll have a motion to accept the recommendation as the report is, and thank you for all your work you put into it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We like the colors.
Good. I'm glad.
All that practice upstairs now, colors.
Okay, thank you.
That's an inside joke for you, don't understand. Thank you very much, Lane.
You're welcome.
Up next, Human Resource Officer, Gaila Uremcio.
Hello, everybody. I'm back. So, the background, the draft policy presented to you has been reviewed and vetted by our legal counsel, in addition to the recommendations that were previously brought forward to you at the last ledge meeting on June 6th that I attended. So Schedule A has been drafted and added as well by legal counsel. So all our employees will be required to sign off that they reviewed and understand the drug and alcohol policy upon their commencement, as well as annually. So the annual signing will occur at the employee's first professional development review of the year. And this year it will happen at the second one, just due to timing of the proposed policy update. Our legal counsel has advised us against onboarding DNA testing, as we don't meet the legal threshold for safety-sensitive positions. So, do you want me to keep going through my memo? Yeah?
So right now,
Yes.
hopefully we've all read this, and it will be coming to the next council meeting.
Yes.
Is there any points or anything in there that anybody has any trouble with? We're gonna start with Councillor Rudick.
Okay. So I guess my first question would be against onboarding DNA testing for safety-sensitive positions, and what the legal, why that was the advice that legal provided.
Okay. Chris, do you want to go in, because you talked to our...
Yep. Thanks, Your Worship, and through to Councillor Rudick. So I had that conversation with our legal reps, and basically it comes down to the notion that what we consider a safety-sensitive position for us isn't necessarily a safety-sensitive position in the legal context, which is often why we see that pre-employment drug and alcohol screening in things like the oil and gas sector, for example. So although we may consider, operating a grader through town to be a safety-sensitive position, in the grand scheme of things or in the greater context, the actual risk there is limited to perhaps some vehicles, a sidewalk curb, or, maybe a little bit to the machinery itself. The legal threshold for a safety-sensitive position to compel people to provide, samples for testing is actually way out there in terms of large-scale impacts. So say an oil and gas plant, for example, where somebody under the influence has the potential to blow up millions of dollars of infrastructure and put the lives of 10, 20, 30, 50 people at risk. So it was basically that. The law, the courts consider the procedure somewhat intrusive, so we've got to meet or the employer has to meet a very high threshold to be considered enough to go down that road. And as a municipality, that conversation with the lawyer, they didn't actually see any positions where we met that threshold.
Go ahead. Follow-up question.
Yeah, follow up to that then, that obviously flavors the conversation and the policy that you've presented. So I guess my question and concern would be, I appreciate that the lawyers would know better than I do because I'm not a lawyer, is the concern in terms of protecting the employees, our property, and our citizens. So the onus being on supervisors as well as coworkers to be able to support one another if they identify a concern. So in a traditional work setting in oil and gas, for example, where there are safety-sensitive positions that are required to pass a DNA, there are also post-incident requirements. We won't have that here. So I guess my question and my concern would be the need to be able to, for example, there's a few descriptions here in terms of declaring if somebody is dependent on either drugs or alcohol, as well as the requirement for managers and supervisors to also be aware of that. So I would just be curious and concerned that we are able to meet that threshold in terms of educating our staff and ensuring that we continue to provide safety to our citizens as well as reputation, as well as the citizens that are going to be around. So are we going to be able to meet that requirement?
And yes, so all three of those things were obvious considerations for us as well. One of the reasons that we're moving to do annual sign-offs of the sheet. The legal counsel indicated that was totally optional to us. We opted to err on the side of caution there. Because we're doing the biannual performance reviews now, it gives us that opportunity to sit down and engage and have those conversations with our staff on a more frequent basis. And again, because we're setting those regular expectations, those regular meetings, to come to that meeting with both the employee's performance evaluation document along with those sign-off sheets that we're hoping to do, employee policy manual, and then this being another one. We may add to those as we go on, but that's the perfect opportunity to have those conversations with the employees. We met with you 6 months ago. Noticed a couple of slips in your performance. Anything you'd like to discuss or disclose with us? No? Okay, here's the sign-off sheet, and we all agree we're on the same page, we're aware of the policy. So it just compels that opportunity to have those discussions more regularly with the employees, as opposed to signing off on the drug and alcohol policy, which will be part of the onboarding process, but then 5 years down the road, an issue happens and all of a sudden there's a condition that's brought to light. Well, we haven't had that conversation with that employee for 4 or 5 years since the onboarding. Our proposed system, we're making sure we're at least creating the opportunity to have that conversation once a year.
Yes.
So then my final question would be, because of the legal recommendation, our ability to be able to touch base with employees twice a year, I think it's incredibly important that the testing that shows some responsibility on the town to protect employees as well as coworkers, that we continue to highlight that both with managing staff as well as those that are being supervised, because that again levels up the requirement and the responsibility for us to provide a safe workplace. And again, with staff that we've had for a long time and that are very familiar with one another, that will change some of the conversations that perhaps they might need to have. So I appreciate that this is a new implementation for us and there's going to be some sensitive topics, but again, in the interest of being an employer of choice and focusing on what council has said is most important, our people, I want to make sure that we are very clear with our employees what we're doing to protect them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to add too, is just to make sure that the employees know that it's okay if they feel that they're not fit for duty, whether, stemming from drug and alcohol testing, but separate and apart, if they're really stressed or if they're overtired, that is also an impairment that they might not be fit for duty. So just having those safety conversations that, making sure that they do feel like they're fit for work as well. So kind of separate and apart from the drug and alcohol policy, but, looking forward to maybe a new procedure coming out for managers to kind of go through if they do feel they have an employee that isn't fit for work. Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilor Berry, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I didn't really have many problems the first time around, other than I appreciate my concern was having it go through legal.
Yes.
And so you've addressed that, so I think it's very good. Your comments that you just made, I think, are very important. I think staff need to know that if things are not working out for them personally, et cetera, they have somebody they can come to.
Yeah,
with
and
their
I'd like to
support
give,
and their support for them.
yeah, and I'd like to give the managers the tools as well, or supervisors, lead hands, whoever it may be, you know, when that employee comes to them with that conversation, knowing what to say, knowing what our procedures are in place, you know, what to do, not just drawing a blank and then, yeah.
I like that.
Councilor Curtis.
Thank you. And how are we gonna make sure we have consistency on who and when goes, and there's no animosity between departments if so-and-so hit a curb and they didn't go, but this person did, and now they have to go? How are we gonna make sure that we are consistent in who and why we're taking them?
And good question. I think it's going to depend partly on the severity of you know, the issue at hand. You know, not every time the grader bumps into a sidewalk and then chips the sidewalk will constitute something that might compel us to send somebody on some testing, for example, right? Accidents happen, you know, lawnmowers bump into park benches. It just happens in the nature of the work. But I think that's going to come down to, you know, probably first and foremost, nature of the incident. Was it severe? Was somebody hurt? Was someone else hurt? You know, and then the judgment call from the manager to say, okay, you know, this happened. It was severe enough to warrant my attention. And I suspect that it may have resulted from some type of impairment. So, you know, those would be the general criteria to create that. Otherwise, I agree. Yeah, every time something happened, you know, we'd lose our ability to operate efficiently because, I mean, the nature of some of the work we do, just things get broken sometimes. It is what it is.
And the other thing too would be the bias side of it. Like having an external person be the call, or having a manager from a different department. A, it could be somebody you're very fond of, you're not going to send them, or B, it could be somebody you're not fond of at all and you're definitely going to send them. So how do we make sure we're consistent in all those different avenues?
I would think that our occupational health and safety officer would be involved, so that could be that unbiased person, or myself. Either one of us could be involved in that call as well.
For sure. I just want to make sure it's thought of.
Yeah,
because-
absolutely.
Because I've seen it.
Yeah, right? It
So,
happens. Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
Okay, so on that last question, the occupational health and safety officer, the human resource officer, and the manager would be in on the decision-making if there was to be some testing done after an incident.
I would think so. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it would be the manager's call on what to do. But I mean, as the occupational health and safety officer, the human resources officer, I could give my opinion of what I see fit. But at the end of the day, it's the manager's decision.
I see a problem with that. When left to one. So I would like to see a common practice on that.
Okay.
The manager along with some other one or two members. And if those are the two that we're identifying, that way the biased issue can't come into play.
CAO Leggett, would you be involved in that?
Yep, then I'd be happy to be involved in that. First thought that comes to mind along that front, Your Worship, is to sort of consider it like we do for our new hiring practices now, where it's done sort of in a committee structure. So, you know, yeah, maybe the procedure we develop there is between the manager, the health and safety officer, and either myself or HR as the sort of third voting member to, does this meet our criteria to go for testing? Three-way vote can't be a tie, and there's some people that aren't directly connected to the employee to provide input on that. I think that would alleviate any issues.
I think that would alleviate any concern of the employees, first of all.
Yep.
And the bias issue would go away.
Yep. We okay?
Yeah, I can amend that and add.
Easily done.
Yep. Sounds good to me.
So if the changes were made, and this comes to Monday's meeting, everybody's. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank
Kaylee.
you.
Okay, up next, Director Lefebvre, and our favorite thing to talk about in the summer, snow removal again.
Snow removal in June.
Only in Jasper, or Hinton.
Hinton. This is the snow removal and sanding policy. The attached snow removal and sanding policy is scheduled for review as per the foundational documents planning list. There have been no significant changes to the policy since it was last reviewed in 2018. Your options are that council recommends adding MOS 2004 snow removal and sanding policy as presented to agenda of the next regular council meeting. Or option 2, that council requests further review and revision of MOS 2004 snow removal and sanding policy prior to its approval. Reminding council that this is the policy. We have changed the date. We have reformatted, cleaned up our branding on top of the policy, and that's all that is required in the policy, as the policy tells us when to go remove snow, not when, where, and how, which is in the procedure.
Okay, so I'd like to make a comment that no matter what our policy is, there's always common sense in decision-making about snow removal and sanding. And we don't allow for that. I mean, a lot of people think, well, you hit the threshold, but it's in the middle of a blizzard. I mean, I hate like heck to talk about snow removal this time of year. I know that these policies have to be updated, and as a long-standing member of this council, I don't know we can do a much better job than where we were. I know that right now 53% of the people in town don't really care one way or the other, and the other ones disagree with us. But that being said, I think the policy has worked in the past, and I myself personally see no reason to change anything about it. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Worship. Actually, I think the last time that we addressed this, we caught a few things and actually improved what was taking place, so I have no problems with just repeating and continuing. I think that the snow removal and sanding has been going very well the last few years. It's usually a Mother Nature that makes it difficult.
Any other comments? Councillor Riddick.
Again, if we can share that with the public at a time when they'll be paying attention. Now is not the time to remind them about what snowpack or what triggers will be put in place, but I think that this policy has considered a lot of different scenarios, and like his worship said, common sense will prevail, and we rely on our staff to be able to make good decisions at the time, often in the middle of the night, to be able to determine what happens the next day when we actually have to put our staff to work. So thank you for proactively thinking of this, and I'll look forward to sharing with the public at a time when it's appropriate.
Okay, so we'll see that on Monday as well.
We will, thank you.
Excellent. Next, you have a piece of correspondence.
I do, Your Worship. Would you like me to read the document, the correspondence, or give a...
Just you can give us an overview. We've all read it, and it's part of the
Okay.
package that's online, so.
Sean Sinenschel has sent information regarding the condition of a sidewalk in front of his residence at 5105 49th Ave. He goes into detail about the dangers of a sidewalk that's that may be in ill repair or need replacement, or is felt to need replacement. When I checked with the Public Works Department, this section of sidewalk was already on the priority list and will be weighed, obviously, as we weigh them all. When we do the miscellaneous concrete works, which is starting now, probably get started into July. So it will be put on that list and prioritized based on the amount of budget we have and the severity of the repairs required.
Okay, so just everybody take note of what Director Lefebvre just said. There is a budget for sidewalk repair, and we address what we feel is the worst, and then we move down to something not as bad until the budget is done. And those decisions are made within the Public Works Department. And we haven't had a large increase in sidewalk replacement money for a long time. I know that there are some aging sidewalks in town that people feel that should be done, but until council has the will to increase the budget, Public Works does what it can with the budget they have. Is everybody good with that? Okay, thank you very much, Director Lefebvre. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So just because we haven't had one of these requests for a long time, and our website is accommodating the capacity for people to be able to take pictures and provide feedback via our communications to the appropriate department. You will reach out to the citizen, I assume, and inform of our policy and how we're going to be moving forward with concrete works. But is there an opportunity for us to be able to share with an upcoming talk of the town or something like that to be able to explain how these decisions are made about sidewalks? Because I think most people are concerned about what's right in front of their house or their business and forget that there's a lot of kilometers in town. And there is definitely a rank order of things that need to be completed first. So first off, I'm assuming you'll communicate with this citizen, but I'm wondering if there is an opportunity to be able to chat with the citizens of Vegreville too. Just let them know what the process is.
Yeah, you're right. Councillor Rudick, I mean, it is addressed to the town council, so town council administration always returns correspondence back. And also in that correspondence could be another avenue for providing information like sidewalks, which is also on our website. And yes, we can certainly get more information out on the process of.
Well, I would suggest when answering this letter and any other concerns brought forth by citizens that we highlight that Public Works has a budget and they work within that budget. So if there's any expectations of more work to be done, then that falls upon council to increase the budget for sidewalk repairs, because Public Works does what they can with the money allotted. So I want people to understand that. It's not that they don't want to do more. We are not supplying them with any more money to do it. Okay, thank you very much, Director Lefebvre.
You're welcome.
And next up, Director Johnston. And I'd like to say that his name is now on the bench, and inform everybody that Director Saskew has now started her mat leave, and Director Johnson, Bryce to most of us, will now be in this important role of watching every dime this municipality has. Go ahead, Director Johnston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today's topic is to discuss the reserve policy FIN-6006. The proposal is to approve updates to the reserve policy. It's proposed by myself, with the background being to review and update the reserve policy as scheduled in the foundational documents planning list. There have been no significant changes to the policy since it was previously reviewed, other than updating the formatting and the letterhead that it sits on. The communication strategy is that there are no significant changes to communicate. And we have two options. Option one being for town council to approve the reserve policy as presented at the next council meeting, or for town council to request revisions to the reserve policy to be presented at the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you. So does anybody have any comments on the policy? I know probably Councilor Curtis, you haven't spent a lot of time on this reserve stuff, and maybe Councilor Bullock as well, but do you see any flaws or anything that jumps out at you?
Nothing that jumped out.
It's a bit of a delicate balancing act, and in the last few years, this municipality, through council decisions, was able to carry on with some other projects and stuff because of the reserves that we have had in place. So, I mean, they're very important, the way they're structured and the way they're used. Go ahead, Councillor Barry.
Yes, Your Worship, I agree with you on that. I think that the aspect is that since the format of having reserves has been implemented, it has made it easier to, at budget time and et cetera, and throughout the year to do different projects. So I don't see any problem here. I think it's still well formatted, so I'm completely in agreement with it.
Okay. Councillor Riddick, go ahead.
I'm happy to see it. I think it requires discipline and foresight to be able to strike the balance between having reserves that are dedicated, as well as being prudent enough to be able to have debenture as part of the calculations in our budget decisions. So I'm happy that the town of Vegreville continues to have a policy about our reserves. And I know not everybody does, and I look forward to us being a leader in the area. So thank you for that.
Well done.
Thank you. We'll bring it to next council meeting.
Thank you. Next up, CAO Leggett.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this one's concerning, or it's from Smoky Lake County, letter addressed to us here, and it's regarding resumption of progress towards a North Saskatchewan regional plan, NSRP, and the sub-regional planning. Dear Commissioner, I hope this letter finds you well. At the Rural Municipalities of Alberta November 2022 conference, Smoky Lake County sponsored a resolution in support of resuming or continuing work on the entirety of Alberta's remaining incomplete land use framework regional plans. Although said resolution was not carried, this letter is in furtherance to the subsequent County Council motion 192-22 carried at the December 14, 2022 council meeting, specific to the North Saskatchewan Regional Plan. We're pleased that the former minister's mandate letter dated November 9th, 2022 included direction to, in quote, continue establishing new land use plans under the Alberta Land Use Stewardship Act, end quote. In addition to the ongoing Caribou sub-regional planning, it is our express hope that this can include resuming progress on the NSRP. We are aware that the purpose of the regional planning is to support the numerous policies and strategies that guide natural resource development, support economic growth, and protect our environment. Regional plans integrate these policies and strategies at the regional level and provide policy direction and clarification for decision makers at the federal, provincial, and local levels. The Alberta Land Use Framework 2008 provides a basis for regional plans that guide natural resource development, support economic growth, and protect the environment. Alberta is comprised of 7 regional planning areas, including the North Saskatchewan Planning Area, which is defined by provincial and municipal boundaries, but includes most of North Saskatchewan River watershed, covering a little over 85,000 square kilometers. The North Saskatchewan region includes about 13% of the province and more than 1.5 million Albertans. The interest of our rural communities could be advanced through a completed regional plan. Indeed, regional plans provide the framework for collaborative planning for the economy of the future, including support of energy, underlined, agriculture, forestry, and tourism. We want our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren to be able to grow up, thrive, be healthy, and prosper. Completion of the NSRP would be a coalescing force for the region so that our communities would be singing from the same song sheet towards a prosperous future. The North Saskatchewan Regional Plan was initiated in 2014, including establishment of a Regional Advisory Council terms of reference and a profile of the North Saskatchewan region. The Regional Advisory Council provided 69 recommendations across 6 topic areas, and Albertans were then invited to provide their input on these, which closed in May of 2018. Since then, the province has been reviewing, in quotes, the results of for more than 1,860 days and counting. The NSRP is an opportunity to ramp up not only our ecological integrity, but especially our economic competitiveness. Let's renew the Alberta advantage. Communities, businesses, industry, and Albertans across the NSRP would be well served to see the completion of this important planning document. Finally, we would be pleased to meet with yourself, the minister, and or any department officials regarding this matter. Please do not hesitate to reach out to their administration, and they provide some contact info. Signed sincerely, Lauren Haliski, Reeve, and Division 4 Councillor, Smoky Lake County.
Well, thank you, CAO Leggett. I thought you were going to do the deputy mayor's appointment, and I would tackle... I would tackle Lauren's. I was not going to read it all out. I just wanted to say that Lauren wanted to encourage the province to get back to the NSRP. But thank you for that, and I'm sure Lauren will appreciate it all. I'll bring it up with him on Thursday. but now that it's out there, so again, planning is always the best to be prepared for what the future looks like. Councillor Berry, do you have any thoughts on Reeve Halsey's letter?
Well, I think, Your Worship, it's always important to try and get plans completed. I really do not like to see plans that get started and left behind, and that's an impressive number of days that they've reviewed it without coming to any resolution or conclusion on it. I think that his letter is well written, and I would support it.
So in your opinion, should we, again, support this letter through our own letter to the minister? I mean,
I wouldn't be opposed to that. I mean, we are part of the North Saskatchewan River water basin, so I think that there's planning that should be done, and they should be completing it. And I'd just like to see where they are on it. And with the change in the government right now, it's probably the appropriate time to be looking at the various ministers and prodding them a little bit to get some of the plans done that are just sitting there.
well, as our represent person on the Saskatchewan, because it's no longer the Vermilion Rivershed Water Alliance, it's now we're back to the North Saskatchewan.
Actually, Your Worship, it is still the Vermilion River
Watershed.
Watershed Alliance. We just dropped the society part of it.
Okay.
So that we're now operating exactly as we were in the past, and we are affiliated with the North Saskatchewan River Watershed Alliance. So the only thing we did is change how we did business in the aspect that we don't do it and function as a society. We function as jointly with them now, again, the same as the other sub-watersheds. So it's, we're still the Vermilion River Watershed Alliance, but we're part of the North Saskatchewan.
Okay. So in your opinion, should we write something to the minister supporting, or the ministers here supporting what I guess this was not a motion at RMA, correct?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I don't remember this particular motion in its entirety, but this was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dale, there was some of our staff at that time provided feedback. There were workshops held throughout the area, and there were a number of parties that were involved to be able to provide feedback at that time in 2014, but they haven't enacted them, and some of the challenges aren't just strictly with water usage in the watershed, it's about land use planning. So some of the things that have evolved since that time in 2014 is, for example, the erection of wind farms on arable land, or the use of high-quality agricultural lands for other purposes. And because the province hasn't actually made a decision or determination or followed through on this land use planning, it's left a lot of municipalities in the lurch and in competition with one another. So you've got a perfect storm where industry and municipalities and the provincial government might all be at odds with one another with land use planning. So I think it's prudent actually that the province needs to provide this information to the public, and they should have done it a long time ago. So
as a council, we're all in favor of writing a letter to the province, to the government, encouraging them to get back and in the process of putting this plan together.
I look at it as supporting, it's certainly more of a rural municipality question. My interest is the fact that anything that occurs on the land doesn't affect the water. So, I mean, like in the long run, their issues may be broader, but I think that their issues are important to urban centers just as much as it is the rural centers.
Like the water we drink comes from the North Saskatchewan?
It does, but I mean, like the aspect is the use of the land in these other, the way that they're proposing it here, I think it needs to be, the planning needs to be completed.
Okay, so could we draft a letter maybe, getting back, encouraging the province to get back at the process and get this planning document done, the NSRP? Okay, thank you very much. Next up, CAO Leggett.
Getting back to where I should have been, Your Worship. much shorter one here. So memorandum to council for the deputy mayor appointment. At the organizational meeting held on October 25th, 2021, council decided that each councillor would serve as deputy mayor for a period of 4 months, twice in their 4-year term. Following the schedule presented at the organizational meeting, the next deputy mayor is to be Councillor Justin Curtis. And the recommendation is that Councillor Justin Curtis be appointed deputy mayor for the term of June 27th, 2023 to October 23rd.
Well, anybody with opposing views should bring it to Monday's meeting. Would you encourage that?
Any contentious issues, Facebook posts, your worship, those are all to be directed to Councillor.
Okay, so I guess we'll see this on Monday. Excellent. Okay, so next up is roundtable discussions. This shouldn't take very long. Councillor Berry, since you're that far away.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'll do the quote, I have nothing.
How did this Vegreville soccer players do in the weekend?
A number of the teams have done quite well, getting silver, bronze.
It was Lakeland Cup, wasn't it?
Lakeland Cup for the U19 and U13. So I know U13 boys, U13 girls, I think are going to the provincials. I think the U19 boys are going. Our U13 girls, they didn't have a good day, and things just didn't go for them, so they dropped by 1 point to make it in third rather than going. But we'll be supporting our other teams that are from Cold Lake and from Vermilion that will be there for the U19 girls. So the provincials are in Cold Lake, same time as the Pasanka days, so unfortunately I'll be in Cold Lake, as my daughter will probably still be picked up by another team and attend it. But overall, they did really well. And now this coming weekend, the U15 boys and girls, U17 boys and girls will be in the Lakeland Cup series in Vermilion. And then that'll determine which teams at those age brackets will also attend the Provs. So.
And how is plans coming to bring Lakeland Cup to Vegreville?
The way it's proposed is that it'll rotate, so that one should probably be here next year.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Rudick.
I have a couple of things. A big thank you to the Ag Society for a couple of successful events despite the inclement weather. The musical ride was packed, and in fact they had to turn people away from attending, which was kind of unfortunate because it really drew people from a significant distance to come and be able to observe. And for those of us that were there, great opportunity to be able to see the musical ride of the RCMP, but also be able to see how beloved they are by so many Albertans from all over the place. So it was really an interesting opportunity for Vegreville to be showcasing Indigenous dancing and Ukrainian dancing as a precursor to the show, and of course hear the illustrious words of our mayor. Yeah, illustrious, I said it. And also for the Father's Day event. Again, the weather wasn't great, but the stands were full as well on Sunday, so big thanks to the Ag Society for bringing people from several hundred kilometers away to the community and supporting our businesses. So great events to kick off the summer, and a number of them are long-standing events. So that was the 30th annual Father's Day event, and a ton of people there, even though the weather wasn't great. I did have a couple of concerns that have been brought forward from community members about the vandalizing of the Pride crosswalk, and the concern that that something be done about it, that it's turning into not only an annual painting of the Pride sidewalk, but an annual vandalism of the Pride crosswalk, and, sorry, not sidewalk, crosswalk, and that community members that are concerned that isn't any prosecution or follow-up for those individuals that have been identified as damaging. Something that is not only a public display of our community's acceptance and support of all residents that come and visit in our community, but also concern about the fact that there continues to be defacing of that crosswalk. Also had a question about the conversation that was in our last public meeting about the dressing room. So I've had several community members concerned because they are other user groups of the arena and felt like they were not consulted about the decisions that were being made there that are going to be helpful to the Vipers, but there were other community groups that used that facility that felt like they did not have any engagement. So I think I raised the question at our last meeting, but I think we need to be very clear about what engagement with our public looks like. And when we're talking about meeting with user groups, that maybe we can have a follow-up conversation to some of those to ensure that everybody that's using a facility that's owned by the public, it's owned by the town, it's for all people, that they also feel like decisions consider their input as well. And then the last thing I was just going to say, it's the end of school soon. Some high school students are finished with their jobs, so community is going to be looking a little bit different. We've got kids out and about, and just a reminder to all of us that there's going to be a lot more kids out on the streets, not in schools, and just to be aware because elementary school will be out next week, but high school students and junior high are finishing this week. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the comment you made about defacing the Pride Crosswalk, I would imagine that would be stunting, and it's covered under the Highway Traffic Act. I'm probably correct on that. Has there been anybody identified for the vandalism?
My understanding and having this conversation with some of the law enforcement is that there are cameras that are pointing, but it's difficult to identify the drivers, although the vehicles seem to be the same as the one last year. So I think it's maybe incumbent upon us to maybe, again, reinforce the idea that stunting is one thing, but actually the defacing of that particular public demonstration of council and our administration and our community's openness and acceptance and inclusivity also means that we don't stand for people that are going to be publicly defacing those symbols. So I'm not sure what we can do to be a little bit more forceful, but I do find it concerning enough that the public that brought it to my attention, I was not aware that it had been defaced within 24 hours of it being painted. And it comes at considerable effort, time, and cost. Not just financial cost, public, personal cost to be out there and participating in a public display of our community's openness and accepting. So,
Well, I know that within the province of Alberta, that you can levy fines under the Highway Traffic Act based on the license plate of a registered owner. We may not be able to identify the driver, but it's common practices in a lot of municipalities that a license plate and a ticket goes to the registered owner of that vehicle. So maybe we should try to find a different angle to take a look at that.
Thanks, Your Worship. Councillor Rudick. We did have one case that we tried to investigate, and it was exactly that. We couldn't, we could see individuals coming out of the vehicle, couldn't catch a license plate on our camera. We reached out to the CIBC bank across the way, tried to get their footage. I haven't actually heard back from them on that yet as to whether or not they were willing to give it to us. But yeah, it's one of those things.
Let's have a discussion with the RCMP. I mean, like Councillor Rudick says, and like this council has said, that we are going to be inclusive in this community, and we're going to try hard to make a difference that way. I mean, it's still stunting in town. And if we have a way to identify who's doing it, and if we can see on a camera that it's repeated offenders, then it's no different than anybody else breaking the law repeatedly. Let's do what we can. So let's have a conversation with the RCMP of what we make steps we have to take to find that out. Thank you. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, he's not deputy mayor yet, is it?
No.
27th.
I was going to go back here to June 9th, where actually the town social committee put on a family barbecue out at the Peace Park. And I did attend, and it was actually a lot of fun. It was well put together. There was tons of games for the kids and the families. There was well over 40 to 50 people there. I just wanted to shout out to them for putting on a good event, and some new employees get to come and bring their family and meet everybody, and that's kind of what we're hoping to build through council, is a better culture for people in the town, and they're helping on that front too. So shout out to them. Then the other thing I wanted to say is just a big thank you to all the parent and volunteers in this town that help put together some of these sporting events and these, the young sports for kids, between baseball and soccer and whatever else there is out there. And I know it's coming to an end in the next week or so for a lot of it, but it's a lot of effort, and we need people like you in the town to keep everything going. So just a big thanks to all those volunteers.
Thank you very much. So, I've had a few complaints, and I've taken them to the right department in town, and we're working on trying to resolve them right now. They're not major, but some same as complaints over and over again. And again, like I said, it's hard to make somebody a good citizen. It really is. We write bylaws to protect people's rights within our community, and when you try to bring a bylaw into effect or force somebody into an action, if they're not willing to be a half-decent citizen, it's tough. But we're still working on all those files. I attended the RCMP musical ride, and it was a great event. It really was, and good on the Ag Society, for putting their name forward to host that, with the RCMP music ride being in town, and it was very well attended. There were so many people that I've never seen before there. Council took on the bartending duties at the Rotary Lobster Night, and it worked out very well. It was sold out, and I think they had 60 takeout orders as well. So it was a really nice function, and I want to thank Councillor Barry, Councillor Bullock, and Councillor Lemko and myself. Well, I want to thank myself, you know what I mean? I was there, okay? And the Rotary Club, they had a lot of different fundraisers during the night. They had a Screeched In, where you got to have a drink of Screech and kiss a cod. Well, this time it was a pickerel, but it worked out well. They raised a lot of money, and they do good work in our community. And so they reached out and asked how they could pay council for it by making a donation to a nonprofit, and I asked them to put it towards the skate park, so in council's name. So, and again, just want to piggyback on what Councillor Rudick said, that in a few days here, school will be out, and I want really to remind everybody there'll be a lot more children around in the daytime, so everybody just slow down a little bit and be very cautious, and keep in mind that they will be around. So next up, Director's Highlights. We'll start with Director Lefebvre.
Director's highlights for myself this week is we're working with Pynchon in the tender process for the remediation of the former Full Throttle site. Their development department is just reviewing the last of the detail. It should be going out to tender less than a week now, and then give it a 2-week tender period, and then a week to review the tender submissions and bring it back to council. So we're looking at 4 to 5 weeks. We'll have solid numbers in front of you, and then options for action plans that we may want to take. The new columbarium was delivered and installed at the cemetery. It's arrived in good shape. Everything's 100%, and we have just set it on its piles. And once the rain quits now, we can then bring in the concrete curbing and some stoneworks and things, and the bench, and get that done. So it was kind of interesting. I haven't seen that before, when they set the columbarium down with a crane. That's annoying. On a crane. I have an interim public works foreman is desperately trying to get a hold of me right now. It just keeps humming, so I'm going to have to leave right after this report. So anyways, they take blocks of dry ice and set the columbarium on top of the dry ice once it's aligned. and they just give it some time, and then the dry ice, as it slowly dissolves and goes away, the thing sets and locks itself into place. So they get their straps and everything out, as opposed to blocks of wood and trying to get those out. Not standard block of ice, it's not hard enough. Apparently, the dry ice is the way to go. So after quite some time on Earth, I learned that new, and I thought that was a very interesting way to approach it.
No pinch points.
So I wanted to share that with council. We have the new crosswalk on 44A Street and 57A Avenue is on the list. It's on the Miscellaneous Concrete Works site, and we are just today have responded back to the two residents about the success of their project, which I'm sure they know because they probably watched the council meeting, and also that we would be reaching out to them to take this little step farther for a public information portion, as we discussed at the last meeting. The Vegreville Speedway also contacted us. The new president, Sean Chilbeck, came and brought us his insurances and all the things that he need, and two scheduled race weekends. So Friday, July 28th is the night race, and then July 29th as the Saturday wrap it up, and they'll have the Sunday as a rainout day. And then the next one is Saturday, August 26th. So they're running two events this year at our Vegreville Airport. So that's the Vegreville Speedway Society. You remember seeing in the paper and at our last meeting about the subdivision process for subdividing one lot into four. It was run its course in the paper for the 2 weeks, the advertising. We've held the subdivision meeting. Subdivision Authority Board has approved the application. So now that will move into its next steps of development conditions and move forward with that subdivision on our Highway 16A frontage. So that was good news as well. The forced main replacement project, that's our 2023 capital works project for this year. We have decided to take the tender close date of the 20th and extend it to the 27th. We just need a little more time to get our coring results done that we talked about at a previous meeting. And also we are offered two different dates to bring potential contractors or those that are tendering out to site to physically see and touch pictures. Here's the lift station, here's the internal components, here's where the line runs, here's where the sample holes will go, here's where the valves are, here's what our lagoon structure looks like. We found that to be very valuable when they come out and actually see what they're bidding on and the magnification of the project and any difficulties. So there's no forces or problems after with something that may come up. So the last one is this Wednesday for the show and tell, if you will, and then next Tuesday, tenders close, and we'll have some results for you at the next council meeting. So we're excited about that. That, Your Worship, unless there's any questions, is my director highlight.
Any questions? Go ahead, take your phone call. Next up, Director Johnston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Over the past few weeks, I've spent significant time cross-training with Director Saskew prior to her maternity leave. In addition to learning her duties, I've attended our weekly senior management meetings, Legend Council meetings, the quarterly management meeting, a Vegreville feasibility update meeting, council workshop, and RCMP meeting to discuss needs and costing. We've updated monthly financial and cash flow reports, and we'll have a formal financial update for next week's council meeting. We are awaiting the May closeout, which is being held up due to a bank reconciliation being out by about $4,000. So right now we have the admin team working through a few audit steps, and they should have that reconciled by the end of today, which will allow for me to finalize May financials and close out the month. We have also restructured a few admin positions to allow for more timely reporting, and we'll look to improve the turnaround time and monthly closeout procedures for the future months. Some of the other projects that we've been working on are reviewing the annual report, which Lane did a fantastic job putting together, updating the reserve policy, updating reserves to account for recent capital purchases that we've made from year to date, submitting library grant funding application, submitting the charity returns that were completed, completing the land sale contract and forwarding it to legal, and completing some property tax calculations and corresponding those with Concord for their new takeover.
Excellent. Any questions? So usually, I've been in business a long time, and when I reconciled the end of the month and if I was over by 4,000, I didn't say a lot. Just joking. We expect everything to reconcile.
That's the goal.
Yeah, I know. You guys in your field, they want to be even all the time. Any other thing for Bryce? Okay. Thank you. Next up, CAO highlights.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just referring to the action item sheet first, tracking a bunch of items here for the month of June. A few noted off as complete. One that pertains to today would be item 48, which was reach out to schools for the bike park opening. We have moved to cancel that because of the poor weather there. We're probably going to put these photos on our web pages and stuff and use them in our advertising. So we want a nice background for them. But the ask was to reach out to the schools and see if we could borrow a class or whatever. The school did indicate that that'd take some permission slips and stuff. So what we'd agreed to do was just use some of the staff members' kids as a workaround. But we'll do the same thing when we get some nice weather, and we'll still able to do that. Two items I'd like to just touch on briefly that aren't on the action item sheet, but something that my desk took care of last week. And a notable one at that was the renewal of the post office lease. So had been working on that for about 6 months or so with Canada Post. Went back and forth with a couple of proposals and then some numbers. And good news is they've renewed the lease for a substantial increase here for the next 5 years. So it's gone from in the mid 50s in terms of annual revenue up to just shy of 84 for the first year, and all the way up to 95 by year 5. So long story short, by the time that 5-year agreement's done, we'll be booking about 95,000 of revenue from that tenant for the Canada Post building. That's a substantial increase over what was there, obviously, that 50 versus 80 or 90. What that means, and I'd been very transparent and forthcoming with Canada Post in the negotiations and just letting them know where our position was. We were only booking about $13,000 a year in net positive cash flow from the previous relationship, which didn't give us a lot to build reserves for things like roofs and windows and furnaces and some of the stuff we need we think we need that's upcoming in that building. Now I feel that relationship's changed and there's enough of a cash flow there that we can put some proper dollars and maintenance into that building and keep it going for the foreseeable future. So I do consider that a pretty good win. We're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 150-ish thousand over that 5-year relationship alone of positive cash flow. So thanks to Canada Post. I doubt they're listening, but for what it's worth, it was a great collaborative discussion, and yeah, good to hear. So, and then last but not least, just remind everybody of the AB Munis caucus meeting happening in St. Paul there tomorrow. Those of us that are attending, I'm heading to that, and 9 a.m. breakfast, 10 a.m. start, and that's it for me.
Okay, well, thank you, and I appreciate the work that you put in with the Canada Post on that lease. I know that our initial conversations were that there's no way we can stay where we're at because the boiler itself would take 22 years probably to pay it off of where we were at. So the understanding, the way you presented it to them, that there's no way that this can keep going. And again, it's a very strong, nice structure left in the building, but it needs upgrades. So I think where we're at now, that as we move forward, that it won't put us in a negative position. So good on you for that.
Thank you. And just one note on that too. The boilers were a note of concern, for a while or throughout the negotiation. The manager of Parks, Recs, and Facilities is in the process of signing a new contract for our HVAC folks there to do our assessments and stuff. Looks like there's going to be some savings there over the previous one too. He did ask that contractor to go in and take a look at the boilers in the post office, and they're actually not as bad or as old as we thought they were. They're not new by any means, but I'd sort of heard that they were basically as old as the building, and it looks like that they'll be good for a couple of years. Knock on wood. So
well, there we go.
Yeah,
pretty much done now.
Good news there. We do know.
Shutout.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, hopefully that didn't jinx us, but we do know the roof needs to be done and possibly the windows. What I'd like to do on this year's foundational documents list is a post office assessment. So we'll come to council in a future meeting here with a quick report that says I'd like to use first little bit of that newly found cash flow to hire a professional building envelope assessor and do a full top to bottom, basement to roof assessment to the building and give us some timelines and some costs on. The manager and I have done it, but it's tough for us as staff members to put that report together without some of the nuances. But we know there's soft spots in the floor, the stairs on the outside of the building, probably require a little bit of adjustment. There's some spalling on the concrete, those types of things. So we just want to put that, have a professional do that and put it together in a report that we can reference in the future.
Okay, I do have a concern on item 49. Discuss timeline for Pasenka Park paving. And Councillor Bullock has brought it up with me after last meeting regarding Canada Day, regarding Pasenka Festival, and where we might be at what stage of construction with the weather we've seen now. And we know our contractor has other jobs that he's not getting to right now, the one that won the tender. So I was wondering, Dale, what were your thoughts or how you want to move forward down there?
Well, at this point, based on the contractor's previous commitments and the weather that we've had, which we always get in June, we are not going to be approaching it until after the Canada Day long weekend. And we will see what the forecast is doing. We could still do construction between Canada Day long weekend and the next weekend, which is the Pasenka days, as far as prepping, but not shutting it down to pave. That we can get out of the road, hopefully for the function of Pasenka days, and then come back in after and actually put the pavement down. We can't just keep waiting and waiting, obviously, because our contractor has other jobs to get done, and some of them are ours as well. So we have to do it. And in the summertime, with the amount of people we have attending our park, it's never a good time to do it. So we're just going to do it the best we can and get it done. And like I mentioned before, this will probably be a 1 in 12-year event that we'll have to put up with. So that's the plan at this point, pending Mother Nature and weather.
I know he was concerned about that, and I feel that if we wait till after the long weekend, July 1st, and we can prep that, the ground and get that ready and not be paved, it is even better than what it is today. So I think that will, and again, I know it's reliant on the weather, so. Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other items for council? Okay. So there is the Alberta Munis tomorrow in St. Paul. Right now, Councilor Rudick and myself and CA Leggett, you are going. Okay. And what else we got? Monday is our next council meeting, and then the list of what's going on here the rest of the summer. So I would now take a motion to go into closed session. Councilor Rudick makes the motion at 4:23. All those in favor? Carried.